It's quite something to consider, isn't it? How we navigate relationships with, well, fewer built-in tools than you might think,
Hmm.
especially when something like infidelity comes up
Hmm.
and what that even means. It could be broader than just, the physical side.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're digging into today based on your request. Julia Hartley Moore's book, Infidelity, Exploding the Myths.
Right.
And Moore's angle is pretty unique, I think. She was a private investigator specializing in this very area.
Yeah. Years of
So
experience.
her insights aren't just theoretical, they're like forged in the fire of real cases. That's what you wanted us to capture.
Exactly. So our mission here in this deep dive is to really pull out the core insights from Moore's work for you.
Uh-huh.
We want to help make sense of infidelity, bust some common myths, maybe help recognize potential signs,
Yeah.
without it feeling overwhelming.
And we'll be using her own stories, the case studies she includes, which are fascinating, and her, well, very direct advice.
Very direct is right. I mean, you look at chapter titles like Dispelling the Myths of Infidelity, Signs of Betrayal, and even How to Spot a Cheat at 1,000 Paces.
Yeah, subtle.
It tells you she's not messing around. It gives a sense of the scope.
And she gets right to the heart of it, defining infidelity. For her, it's both physical and emotional.
Okay.
But the crucial part, the thing that makes it so damaging, is the deception involved, the lying.
The lying. That
Yeah.
makes sense. She even brings up Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, right?
Hmm.
To show how complex defining physical relations can be.
Yeah, exactly. Clinton's famous line, "I did not have sexual relations." Moore points out that for him, apparently oral sex didn't count.
Wow. Oh,
So it really forces you, the listener, to think, well, where do I draw that line? What does it mean in my relationship?
that's a really important starting point.
And what's fascinating right off the bat is how Moore challenges our basic assumptions about relationships.
How so?
She uses this analogy, learning to use cloth nappies. It's not instinctive, right? It's learned.
Yeah.
And she argues navigating relationships, especially infidelity, is similar. We aren't necessarily like naturally equipped for it in today's world.
It really rings true.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about the historical context she brings in.
Hmm.
Our mothers, their mothers, they often lived in very different worlds, different societal roles.
Totally different expectations.
So they might not have had the same kind of experiences or, frankly, the language to pass down advice for navigating modern relationships where women are juggling so much more.
Right. Career, family, partnership. It's a different landscape. And she links this to a broader issue, too.
Which is?
This reluctance, even now, to have really open, honest talks about sex and intimacy.
The awkwardness factor.
Yeah, exactly. And that discomfort, unfortunately, can make deception seem, well, easier for some people than facing difficult conversations.
So lying becomes the path of least resistance in a twisted way.
It can seem like it. If you can't talk about what you want or need, maybe you just go find it elsewhere and hide it.
It's a pretty sobering point she makes, too, about traditional relationship counseling.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, the success rates when infidelity is the main issue.
Yeah.
Well, they aren't always great. Research suggests a lot of couples don't see lasting change.
That's discouraging. Makes you wonder if standard approaches always fit the specific problem.
Maybe not. And this sort of ties into another contrast she makes.
Okay.
The difference between, say, textbook psychology's view of a cheater confessing
Right, the remorseful confessor.
versus her real-world experience as a PI, which she says is often just serial denial, like denying even when the proof is right there.
That gap between theory and messy reality. That's why she felt she needed to write the book, I think, to offer something more grounded.
Practical, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for people dealing with repeated lies, and it's not just new couples either.
No.
She busts that myth that long marriages are automatically safe harbors.
The 30-year itch is still an itch.
Apparently.
Yeah.
She talks about clients married 30, 40 years who've dealt with multiple betrayals. Length doesn't equal fidelity, basically.
That's a tough truth. Okay, so then she gets into some specific scenarios, right? Like the anonymous letter.
Yeah, the dreaded anonymous letter revealing an affair.
What's her take on that? Beside panic.
Well, interestingly, she kind of frames it as a twisted favor
A favor. How?
because it brings hidden truths out. Painful? Yes, but out. She mentions the usual sources, jilted lovers, jealous colleagues, you know the type.
Right. Someone with an axe to grind or a guilty conscience.
And her advice, if you get one, it's pretty
Yeah,
direct.
I
She
don't-
says, if there's even a tiny nagging doubt in your mind already, that little voice saying something's off,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, that letter's probably meant for you. Trust that gut feeling.
Wow. Pay attention to the whispers.
Exactly. Which kind of leads into her own story a bit. Her first husband, Barry.
Oh, she shares her own experiences too.
Yeah, briefly here, she mentions things like his memory lapses, convenient ones,
Hmm. Like what?
like the car not being where he said it was, little inconsistencies.
Okay.
And what really hits home is how she initially doubted herself, tried to rationalize it.
Oh, sure. You want to believe the best, right?
Right.
Maybe he is just forgetful.
Exactly. That tendency to explain away red flags because confronting the alternative is too painful.
It makes her perspective feel very human, very relatable.
Totally. And it sets up her discussion of the big myths around infidelity.
Okay, let's hear them. What's myth number one?
The classic. The other woman must be prettier, sexier, better than me.
Ah, yes. The comparison trap.
She says clients ask her this constantly. And her answer,
Yeah.
it's often hard for them to accept
Which is?
that the other woman is often just available, ready, willing, convenient, not necessarily superior in any way.
Exactly. It's less about the partner lacking something and more about opportunity and, well, the betrayer's choice.
That takes the focus off the partner's perceived flaws, I guess.
Yeah. She emphasizes that while people notice attractive others, it's usually not some irresistible siren song. Often it's just proximity and willingness.
Okay. What's another myth she tackles?
The midlife crisis, especially for men.
Right, the cliche explanation for affairs and longer marriages.
She's pretty skeptical of that label, says she's seen infidelity across all ages, from early 20s to 80s.
So it's not just a 50-something thing.
Not according to her cases. She uses this example, Sarah. Her husband, Greg, had affairs. Sarah called it a midlife crisis.
Okay.
But then she realized Greg had been cheating pretty much since day one of their 37-year marriage.
Oh, so less a crisis, more a lifelong pattern.
Exactly. The label was just convenient, a way to avoid seeing the bigger picture, maybe.
Interesting. Does she talk about gender differences much?
She does, and maybe not in the way you'd expect. She actually suggests women can be more calculating when they cheat,
Really? How so?
more strategic planning. She gives an example, Yvonne, who apparently used affairs for both sex and, like, significant financial gain.
Wow. Opportunistic.
And she contrasts how men and women might bring a lover into their lives, suggests women might be subtler about integrating them into social circles sometimes.
That connects to another point she makes, doesn't it? About overlooking the obvious.
Oh, yeah, the swimming example. Jeff and Kate.
Right. He notices his wife comes back from the pool, swimsuit's wet, towel's wet, but no chlorine smell.
And his first thought isn't, suspicious. It's,
Oh, Kate's just not the type to have an affair. We put people in boxes.
exactly. We filter reality through our assumptions about people.
Which leads her to say, what about frequency?
That women cheat just as often as men, basically, at least in modern Western societies.
But maybe get caught less.
That's her argument. Better planning, more foresight about consequences. Whereas men,
Might be a bit more impulsive or arrogant about it.
less worried about getting caught, perhaps, or just don't think it through. That lack of planning becomes their undoing.
And she also tackles the idea that if someone cheats, their partner must be lacking somehow.
Right. She points to famous examples, Princess Diana, Jennifer Aniston, Halle Berry.
Women widely seen as beautiful, desirable.
Yet their partners were unfaithful. It drives home that infidelity often says more about the cheater than the person cheated on.
That's a really important point for self-esteem, I think.
Definitely. Another myth. They'd never bring them into our home.
Oof, does that happen?
More than people think, she says. Sometimes literally, physically in the home.
Okay.
Other times it's more subtle. Introducing the affair partner into the friend group. Normalizing their presence.
Like that case she mentioned, Josh and Celine.
Yeah. Celine was shocked to realize how often Josh's colleague, Georgina, the affair partner, had been at their barbecues dinners over 2 years.
Wow, hiding in plain sight.
The boundaries just get completely blurred. Deception seeps into everyday life.
She also had that, slightly strange example from her surveillance work, the beauty therapy place.
Oh, right. Where hardly any women went in, but lots of men did, including a client's husband.
Yeah, for stress relief during lunch
Yeah.
breaks.
A stark reminder that things aren't always what they seem. Innocent fronts can hide other activities.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move into the signs of betrayal. Where does she start?
With something often dismissed. Intuition. Your gut feeling.
Ah, the spidey senses.
Kind of. She calls it an acute subconscious connection. and says humans are weirdly good at overriding it.
We rationalize it away.
Yeah, we look for logical proof instead of just trusting that nagging feeling. She really urges listeners, trust your gut.
Even if you can't explain why you feel uneasy.
Especially then, the energy spent trying to find a safe explanation might be better used just looking at what you do know.
Okay, so intuition first. What about more tangible signs?
Sudden changes in sexual behavior, big ones. Could be pulling away completely, or suddenly demanding way more sex than usual, or introducing totally new things in bed.
Things you've never done before.
Right. She uses the example of Sarah and David again. New requests led Sarah to check credit card bills.
And found.
Visits to massage parlors. The requests and the financial trail lined up.
That digital footprint again? It often tells a story.
It really does. Another huge red flag for Moore. Mobile phone secrecy.
Oh yeah, the phone guarding.
Totally. She lists specific things, always keeping it on them, taking it to the bathroom, walking away for calls, obsessively checking messages, maybe leaving it off, then checking sporadically.
It's the pattern. Right. Not just one time.
Exactly. One odd call is one thing. Constant obsessive guarding. That suggests something's being hidden, some communication they don't want you to see.
Makes sense. What about talking about someone a lot?
Yeah, interestingly, even if it's negative talk,
How does that work?
she gives the example of Roy constantly bad-mouthing a new female colleague, Natalie.
Okay, seems like he dislikes her.
But Natalie herself started thinking, why does he mention her so much? The frequency felt off.
Ah, protesting too much.
Pretty much. Turns out Natalie's gut was right. Roy was having an affair with the colleague he supposedly couldn't stand.
Wow. A deflection tactic.
Clever, but manipulative. Create an impression of dislike to hide the attraction.
Okay. She also brings in the perspective of the other woman, right?
Yes, which is important. She points out that women involved with married men often don't grasp that he's lying to her just as much as he's lying to his wife.
They think they're getting the real story.
Often, yeah. And this can lead to them being exposed accidentally. Unexplained males showing up at their place, anonymous calls once the wife starts digging.
It unravels from both ends sometimes.
And sometimes the cheater tries to preempt this, like that guy who invented a stalker story.
Right, to explain away weird calls. But no police report. Oops.
The details often don't add up under scrutiny.
Okay, what about common excuses? Like business trips.
Ah, yes, the classic cover. She has a couple of strong case studies here. John, the surgeon.
What was his story?
Third marriage. His current wife had actually had an affair with him while he was married before.
Oh, so she knew the playbook.
Exactly. She knew the patterns. Past behavior is a big predictor for Moore.
So what did John do?
Flew to another city for a supposed conference, checked into a hotel, then flew straight back home to be with his lover.
Leaving a fake trail.
Tried to. Sent messages from the hotel phone. But his wife's intuition was strong, she investigated, and it all fell apart.
Wow. And the other one, Brian.
His unexpected business trip conveniently landed on Valentine's Day.
Subtle.
Right. His wife, Shirley, felt something was off. She actually went to the airport.
No way.
Checked the last flight arriving from where he supposedly was, and caught him meeting another woman right there.
Ouch. Caught red-handed.
What's interesting is both wives had strong suspicions, found initial evidence, but still hired more.
For confirmation? Or maybe guidance?
Probably both. Even with proof, knowing what to do next is hard. Sometimes you need that professional validation or plan.
True. Okay, what about more? Direct evidence. She mentions a sex kit.
Yeah, Joan finding Viagra, condoms, lube in her husband Richard's car, then another stash in the garage.
Pretty undeniable.
Especially when, like in Joan's case, Viagra use had never even been discussed between them. It screams secret sexual activity outside the marriage.
It's concrete proof of concealment.
Definitely. And related to concealment. Pins and passwords, phones, computers.
Her logic here is pretty straightforward, right?
Super simple. In a trusting, monogamous relationship, why the intense secrecy from your partner? What are you hiding?
Good question.
And the story of Trish, who finally got into her husband's password-protected computer.
And found emails detailing an affair.
Exactly. The act of hiding the information itself becomes a huge red flag.
Okay. Moore lists some common excuses people use when caught and the likely truths.
Yeah, it's quite illuminating. Like finding porn mags. Oh, someone else must have left them here.
Likely truth. He looks at porn.
Pretty much. Or those late calls to massage parlors. Just wanted a friendly voice.
Likely truth. Paying for services.
Right. Or the classic, caught having coffee with someone suspicious. She just needed someone to talk to.
Likely truth. It wasn't just coffee or talking. These excuses just don't hold water.
Not usually. Then she shifts gears a bit to talk about how women can sometimes be their own worst enemies in these situations.
How does she mean that? What kind of behaviors?
Well, one is staying despite repeated lies, only acting when the proof is absolutely undeniable.
Delaying the inevitable.
Kind of, and Moore is pretty blunt about it. Basically says, don't complain if you choose to stay, accept your choice. Tough love, maybe.
Wow. What else?
Martyrdom in marriage. Continuing to do everything, making his lunch, running the house, even when the relationship is sexless or he's cheating.
Enabling the behavior.
It can make it easier for him to have the best of both worlds, essentially. No consequences at home.
She also talks about sexless marriages, right? Where it's not by choice.
Yeah, where the husband has lost interest, often while seeking sex elsewhere, like with prostitutes.
And the wife feels trapped or devalued.
Exactly. And the imbalance in how important sex becomes in that situation.
And she tackles the rationalizations, too. Like, prostitutes aren't as bad as an affair.
Yeah, the idea that it's just physical, no emotional connection. Moore argues the man's motivation is often primarily physical in both scenarios anyway.
So that distinction doesn't really hold up for her.
Not really. She also points out women who have proof but don't act out of fear or other reasons, and delaying can sometimes hurt their credibility later.
And even women who are financially independent but stay in draining situations.
Right. It's not always about money. There are complex emotional reasons people stay.
She also mentioned something about unwanted group sex.
Yeah, briefly. A distressing example of a woman pressured into threesomes by her husband. A total lack of respect for her boundaries.
That's awful. Okay, shifting slightly. She warns against playing detective too early.
Yes. Confronting without a solid plan or good evidence, why is that bad?
Because it just tips them off. They get better at hiding things.
Exactly. They learn your suspicions, cover their tracks more carefully, making it harder to find the truth later. Her advice: get solid proof first, even just catching them in one clear lie, and have a plan before you confront.
Makes sense. Get your ducks in a row.
Totally. She also flags a manipulation tactic.
Oh.
The cheater suddenly claiming they are ill or someone connected to the affair is ill.
Why? To deflect suspicion.
Precisely. Plays on the partner's empathy, especially female sensibility, she suggests. Makes them feel bad for being suspicious when the person is supposedly suffering.
That's quite calculated.
It can be. Then there's the whole perception of attractiveness issue.
How attractive the partner is or the affair partner.
Both. How a client sees them can get distorted before and after betrayal, but Moore's core message is
the cheater is responsible, period, regardless of how attractive anyone else might seem.
Exactly. Blaming the other woman or your own perceived flaws avoids the real issue, the betrayal of trust.
Right. Let's revisit the gender dynamics. She thinks women cheat as often.
In contemporary Western society, yes, but get caught less. Why?
Better planning. Maybe male intuition isn't as sharp. Maybe some male arrogance. My wife would never.
All of the above, she suggests. Plus, women have more independence, more opportunities in the workplace now. The landscape has changed.
And some women, when cheated on, don't leave, but get even.
Yeah, she gives examples like Sally, who had her own revenge affairs. Different people react very differently to betrayal.
Definitely. Which highlights the need for clear boundaries.
Absolutely critical. More stresses couples need to define upfront what infidelity means to them, what's unacceptable. No gray areas if betrayal happens.
Because love isn't just a feeling.
It's behavior. Honesty, respect those demonstrate love. Lying about anything is disrespect.
And lying itself, or aggression, can be signs of guilt.
Even without proof of an affair, yes. That story of Rebecca, whose husband Steve got super aggressive when she asked about an unexplained weekend trip.
The reaction itself was suspicious.
Very. And Hannah catching her husband lying about seeing his ex. It just chips away at trust until there's nothing left.
Yeah, trust is foundational.
Ah.
She circles back to her own story again. Andrew?
Briefly, yeah. Mentions changing careers to become a PI and then remarrying Andrew, hinting at later problems, kind of sets the stage.
For what concept?
The wolf in sheep's clothing. Financial opportunists.
Ah, charming but self-serving. What are their traits?
Often lack real achievements despite big talk. Inflated ego. Blame others for failures. Might play the charming rogue or the rough diamond.
Someone different from the last partner.
Often, yeah. And they're skilled at getting victims to support them financially, lavish gifts on them. Maybe they don't even need to work.
She used examples like Margaret funding Frank, Kate being exploited by Bill.
Right, illustrating how financial manipulation gets disguised as romance.
And she calls financial betrayal a specific, damaging form of infidelity.
Explicitly, often linked to emotional betrayal. Those stories of Raywin's husband Heath's secret life and money mess.
And Jan's online lover, Mark, who was dishonest and needed money.
Yeah, they really show the devastation. Plus, the warning about mail-order bride sites fits here too. Unrealistic expectations, potential exploitation.
And online relationships generally carry risks.
Emotional manipulation, scams. That awful example of the woman coerced into depraved acts online by someone unseen. A definite warning.
Okay, let's talk tech. Digital evidence.
Huge factor now. Phones, computers. They facilitate affairs, but they also leave trails.
Even deleted stuff can sometimes be found.
Sometimes, yeah. Messages, videos, financial records, but it's not always straightforward.
Like Dave and Rochelle's computer check. Found something unexpected.
Yeah, a transsexual newsletter subscription, not evidence of another affair with a woman. Shows you can't predict what you'll find.
And tech isn't everything.
No, Moore emphasizes it doesn't replace human investigation for understanding the context behind the data.
Right, okay, then there's that chapter, How to Have an Affair.
Yeah, the irony. What's her point there?
Basically that men get caught more often, so they need the advice.
Tongue-in-cheek, maybe.
A bit.
Yeah.
But she outlines rules. Avoid workplace affairs. Too risky.
Oh.
Be aware of small details that give you away. Secrets always unravel. Be careful with phones.
Common sense for cheaters, I guess. And a warning to mistresses.
Oh, yeah. Very direct, basically. You're probably being lied to as well. And he's very unlikely to actually leave his wife for you. Statistically speaking, harsh truths. Okay, then she tells her own big story. Discovering her second husband, Bob's affair.
This is the detailed one, around Christmas.
Yeah. Starts with a late-night call that felt wrong. Then finding a receipt for jewelry, a bracelet, that made no sense.
Inconsistencies piling up.
His phone behavior got super secretive, changing pin ends.
Huh?
Then the clincher.
What was it?
She hit redial on the home phone, accidentally got his voicemail access code, listened to the messages, found the secret squirrel messages, clearly intimate coded talk with another woman.
Wow. Secret squirrel, that's something.
Right. It's how the small things, the good feelings, finally led to undeniable proof. Even then, he denied it.
Of course he did. Continued lying.
Absolutely. Excuses, denials. So she confronted him, but then decided to get proof of ongoing contact.
Had him follow.
It confirmed he was still seeing the other woman. And that was it. She ended the marriage.
Must have been incredibly difficult.
She's honest about how hard raising kids alone was, but also the massive relief of getting out of that constant stress and suspicion.
That makes sense. The emotional toll must be huge. So from all this, what's her core advice for moving forward?
First and foremost, trust your instincts. That gut feeling is powerful, even if illogical.
Okay. What else?
Reassurance about kids. Often better with one happy parent than two miserable ones constantly fighting.
That's a common dilemma. Good point.
When choosing a partner next time, be lovingly suspicious. Evaluate character thoroughly. Look past charm.
Don't just fall for the smooth talker.
Exactly. Look for essentials. Trust, respect. Don't try to change someone. Trust your first impressions.
Make sure they have the basics, emotional, moral qualities.
Yeah, the whole package. And never, ever be with someone you can't trust or admire. That's fundamental.
Solid advice. And if a relationship does end badly?
Take responsibility for your part. Accept it's over. Don't carry resentment. Heal. Value yourself. Stay open to future love.
It's about learning and growing from it, not letting it define you.
And she emphasizes it's never too late. She herself found love again later with Steve.
So there's a happy ending to her personal story.
Yes, a hopeful note that finding genuine connection is possible after betrayal.
That's good to hear. Okay, the final section is more practical, legal stuff.
Yeah, an overview of legal considerations after a breakup. Important, but maybe less dramatic.
Still crucial, though. What does she cover?
Importance of getting legal advice early. Lawyer-client privilege. Then key issues.
Like kids, property.
Exactly. Guardianship, parenting arrangements, focus on kids' best interests, parents consulting. Child support usually formula-based. Spousal support, often temporary, based on need and ability to pay, aiming for a clean break. Relationship property generally shared equally after a certain time, but can be adjusted. full disclosure needed.
What about unmarried couples? De facto relationships.
Yeah, she explains what constitutes one legally living together like a married couple. Factors courts look at like finances, commitment, public perception, and mentions economic disparity claims if one partner's career suffered due to the relationship.
So, a basic roadmap of legal things to consider.
Right. And she points to resources in Australia and New Zealand, noting laws vary.
Good practical info to round things out.
So wrapping up this deep dive into infidelity exploding the myths, we've really hit on a lot.
Definitely. The complexity of it, busting myths, recognizing signs.
The role of personal responsibility, both in the relationship and after. Moore's own story really brings it home.
And while the emotional side is huge, knowing the potential legal aspects is important too.
It is. Perhaps the biggest takeaway, though, or something to chew on, is that maybe we can never fully know what's in someone else's heart. So what does building a life together mean with that uncertainty?
That's a deep one. Moore seems to suggest that understanding the patterns of betrayal and our own reactions is where the power lies. It leads to self-awareness.
Right. So maybe the question for you, the listener, is, what does this deep dive make you think about your own boundaries, your expectations in relationships?
Something to reflect on.
Absolutely. This was just a slice of Julia Hartley Moore's book, of course. Lots more detail and nuance in there.
If it sparks something, definitely worth exploring further.
We encourage you to do that. For now, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.